All right, hello everyone. So here is the Unit 2 review answers. So I'm going to walk through the problems. I'm going to try and take it slow so that those of you who need another minute can really understand what I'm saying, or hey guys, remember this is a video, so you can always pause it when you're at home to stop me, finish what you're doing, and then continue. So Unit 2 review. Make sure your name is on it because, y'all, so many no-name papers. It's very sad. So, number 1. Larry has been counting his steps to lose weight. After taking a walk yesterday, he walked a total of 5 3/5 miles. Which fraction represents the distance that Larry walked yesterday? So, we have a decimal, we need a fraction. So, if we remember our FDP rules, we're going to remember that the way we read this is the way we say it. So, 5 3/5. So, 5 3/5. Now, here's the thing. We've got this, but that's not any of the answers. So, what we need to do next is simplify. Now, I see 35 and 100. Now, I know 35 is divisible by 5. So is 100. So I'm going to divide the top and the bottom by 5. So 35 divided by 5 is 7. 100 divided by 5 is 20. So we're left with 5 and 7/20. Pretty easy. Just remember, when you're looking at this, the numbers to the right of the decimal are your numerator, and the place value, in other words, the hundredths, is your, is your denominator. All right, number 2. A list of numbers is shown below. Which list of numbers is in descending order? Now, descending, we descend the stairs top to bottom. So we are looking at making sure we are going from the greatest to the least. So I'm going to go ahead and write greatest to least so I don't forget. And then we all know the very first step to putting our numbers in order is, that's right, making sure they're all in decimal form. So I'm going to make a table to help me out. The original number is 2 7/10. Well, that's already in decimal form, so I'm just going to rewrite it. 45%. To go from a percent to a decimal, what do we do? Divide by 100. So, 45 divided by 100. 100 does not go into 4. It does not go into 45 at all. Add a 0 above our ones place. There's a decimal behind that ones place that we bring straight up. Add a 0 here. 100 goes into 450 4 times. Subtract 400. Leaves us with 50. Add a 0, bring it down. 100 goes into 500 5 times. None left over. So, as a decimal, 45%, sorry, I should have written a percent sign there, is 0 45/100. So I'm going to add a 0 to the 7 so that we make sure that they're the same place value still. And then we have negative 25/100. Well, that's already in decimal form. So we have a negative 0 25/100. Make sure you write that negative so you don't forget. Negative 3/4. What do we do to change a fraction into a decimal? Numerator divided by denominator. So we have 3 divided by 4. 4 doesn't go into 3. Take that invisible decimal up. Add a 0. 28. Left with 2. 4 goes into 20 5 times. So make sure you don't forget that negative. We have negative 75/100. Negative 3/4 becomes negative 75/100. And last but not least, 5 halves. So to turn a fraction into a decimal, we divide top in, bottom out. 5 divided by 2, which leaves us with 2.5, because 2 times 2 is 4, subtract 4, bring down the 0, 2 goes in 10 5 times, and we're left with none left over. So 5 over 2 is 2.5. 2 and 5/10, sorry. All right, now we need to go from greatest to least. Now, the very first thing when we're looking for our greatest number is we look at our ones place, whatever's in the front. So we have two numbers that start with a 2. So now we need to look at the tenths place in these two numbers. 2 and 5/10 or 2 and 7/10. 7 is larger, so 2 and 7/10 has to be in the front. So we have A and C still, but B and D don't make sense. All right, used 2 and 7/10. That's our first one. I'm going to put a little 1 there so I remember. That makes 2 and 5/10 our second number, which is 5 halves. Oh, look, guys, we don't have to even go any further because we have already found this says 2 and 7/10 and then 45% rather than 5 halves. So we know A can't be correct. Let's go ahead and check out all of C just to make sure that somebody did put all the answers. Now, our next number is our next largest. Now, here we have 2 negatives, so those definitely are not going to be our next largest. We've got our positive first, 45%. And here's what I want you to remember about negatives. The larger a negative gets, the smaller it is. So think about temperature. If I'm talking about negative 20 degrees, that's a lot lower, a lot colder than negative 10 degrees. So negative 75 hundredths or negative 3/4 is going to be a lower number than negative 25 hundredths. So it should be 4 for negative 25 hundredths and then 5 for negative 75 hundredths. So we've got 2 and 7/10, 5 halves, 45%, negative 25 hundredths, and then negative 3/4, making C our answer. Megan made 47.5% of her shots in last night's basketball game. Which of the following represents 47.5% as a fraction and a decimal? All right, so 47.5%. That is definitely not a fraction or a decimal, it's a percent. So we're gonna write it over here, 47.5%. What do we do to a percent to change it to a decimal? We divide by 100. So when we divide 47.5 by 100, first of all, we're gonna bring this decimal straight up so that it stays there. 100 does not go into 47. 100 does go into 475. 4 times, subtract 400, left with 75, add a 0, bring it down. 100 does go into 750 7 times, subtract 700, left with 50, 500, 100 goes into 500 5 times. So our decimal here is 0 and 475 thousandths. So, if we're looking at these answer choices, this says 47 and 5/10, which is the same as the percent. That doesn't work. 4 and 75 hundredths, not what we wrote down. 475 ten thousandths, not what we wrote down. 475 thousandths, that makes a lot of sense. Now, if two of these had had the same decimal, the easiest way to check if the fraction is correct is to divide top and bottom out. 19 divided by 40. That invisible decimal needs to come straight up, add a 0. 40 goes into 190. 40 times, we're going to try 4. 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 4 is 16. So 4 times, subtract 160. leaves us with 30. Add a 0, bring it down. 440 times 7 leaves us with 280. Looking good. Left with 20. Bring down a 0, it's 200. 40 goes into 205 times, and our decimal matches our, for this fraction, matches the decimal we got from dividing our percent, meaning D would be correct. All right, you guys, I'm gonna go ahead and stop this video and upload it so that we don't have just a huge long video.